I wanted to make a quick video talking about what I was able to learn from the Cristian Vogel Bitwig Studio Artist Series add-on pack that was released a couple of days ago. I'm not going to be going through the presets and going, oh, this sounds cool. Oh, this sounds cool. Rather, I just want to focus on what I actually learned. So I definitely encourage you to download it yourself, to listen through to the examples and see what you're able to come up with. So I'm kind of stripping some of these presets back. A lot of them utilize the same techniques, but some of those techniques I've never even considered or tried. So we can always learn from other people. It's a great thing to do. And this is going to be our little itinerary of what we're going to go through here in this video. To download this, it's really easy. Just head into the package manager. You can grab it right there, Cristian Vogel Bitwig Lab. Okay, so first thing, we'll just listen to it and then talk about it. Okay, so this is a pretty straightforward thing that I wasn't really aware of, or maybe I was and I just haven't used it in 6 months or so. But what I'm talking about is controlling things like buttons or device on-offs with the macro controls inside of an effects chain. And I wasn't really aware of this. Maybe it's been around since the beginning. Who knows? Very simple, though, little concept here. I can pull back on this low kill, and after I go below 50%, it mutes. Anything above, and it turns on. So the real practical application of this is in more of like live performance. So if you don't want to have your EQ DJ open, you can just have this macro control setting here. Double click it to like bring in those lows. If you're doing like a little beat matching transition type thing, you know, killing one low end, bringing in another. And so to do that, I've just mapped it to this, and I've gone all the way down to -1 because it's just easier visually to do this. If you use other settings, like let's say we're just at -50 or something, you can see that it's only going to kill it right when we get all the way down to the bottom there. Maybe that's what you want, but I kind of like knowing that you can just turn it quickly and get it to kill. So I'd go in there and just map it all the way down. Also be aware if you map like -40 or -30, it's not going to work because our switch is in bipolar. You could pull this out of bipolar and then it would work. However, for my mind, for how I work, this just makes the most sense. So I'll pull it all the way back to -1. And again, there you go. You can turn it on and off. And then you can always switch this out of bipolar. However, then you're going to have to do some slightly different things with how you map this out. On-off switch is a little bit different because what we have here is just if I even go -1, it turns off. And I can't really think of any other way to get this to work other than how it's working here. And you can see that we have this going to the device on-off at +1. Okay, if I go in here and I turn this to -1, you can see that it's just been flipped around. So if I just go up a little bit, it turns it off and vice versa. But let's switch that back to where we have it. And that's not really all of that exciting unless you start to combine some other things with that. And that's what Cristian Vogel did inside of his preset pack. So you'll see there's an example where there's like a bit crusher, a bit 8 device, and it's turned off until you turn a particular knob. Then it comes on and adds in some other effects. So just as an example, I also have a chorus here. And you'll see that even though right now we're on the whole time for the EQ DJ, other things are changing as I pull this up and down. And then when I cross that threshold and it turns off, the further I go, the more things are changing. So that's where this becomes a lot more fun. And so we can listen to that here. So just something simple that you can mess around with like that. I made another example here just so you can see something else. And with this chain, what we have going on is we have a filter, basically a low pass filter. And then what I'm able to turn on and off is a delay and a reverb. And it works pretty much the same way. As I go over, you can see those devices are turning on. All right, and then I have an LFO also with the filter. So just for the sake of example, And then I could do some other things in here if I really wanted to go crazy. I could actually, this is going to be something we talk about in a second. This is another thing that Cristian Vogel did. But I could go in here and I could add in, let's see if I can find what I'm looking for. I think it's the audio mod. And so I could actually put this chain inside of here. And let's see if we can get this to work properly. And I'm going to set this to the cutoff, to the rate as well. So the idea there is just that I'm taking my input signal. In this case, it's this full track. And you can hear that when we get some of those transients, like those kick drums, it's peaking this out and it's actually moving some of those macros for us, which means if I don't have a controller or something plugged in, I could actually set that up, have it work for me, and then I only have to worry about controlling a couple of additional knobs. So these are just kind of like extra spices and sugars that you throw on top of something, like in a live performance, or if you need to make a transition between really extreme ranges in BPM or something like that. All right, so the second thing I want to talk about is what Cristian Vogel did with this particular effects chain here that he calls deep freeze. And really what this does is it just takes a very small snippet of the audio here and it delays it very, very quickly, add in some additional spatial effects, and you're left with basically just like a frozen little grain cloud from the track. But where this becomes interesting is that we have this tool device sitting in front of the delays. So as I increase this freeze amount here, you can see the feedback is peaking out all the way to unlimited feedback, and our mix is increasing. However, as our mix is increasing, our feedback is increasing, our tool is actually turning this down, which just means that we're not going to have to worry about too much extra bleed signal coming in from our source track. In this case, it's a full track, so there would be a lot of content. It would get really mushy really quickly. So we can just listen to that in practice, and then I'll show you a slight modification on it. Okay, so here we go. Starting to get a little grainy. And so you can kind of hear how that's working. It's really an ingenious method of putting a tool at the front, especially because once you have a delay with unlimited feedback and the mix all the way up, you don't really need any extra signal coming in, especially if you're going for like a freeze effect like this. So I'll show you another modification on it right here, and we'll create an FX chain. We'll start by putting in that tool. Let's just make sure we get this right from the beginning. All right, great. So as I increase this amount, this is going to be decreasing. Perfect. A little bit of signal bleed is fine. I'll go in and throw in delay. And in this example, let's just make it easy. Let's just have one delay, and we'll give it like a time of 2 16th notes, an 8th note. Maybe I need to let more signal get into there. Increase the feedback. Increase the mix. Great, so you can hear how that's being controlled there, and we're not getting all this extra bleed from the track. A little bit is nice because it's going to give us some extra variation in whatever we're going to do later, but it's just, again, a really neat and cool way of controlling what you actually have feeding into your delay. I think it's totally ingenious. It's something I never even considered doing. So what we could also do is then add just a couple of additional effects. Let's add like a chorus. Let's add a comb. Actually, I want to figure out, I don't know what's going to happen with this comb, so just be aware of that. And we can, again, set this that we have just this one knob effect. And for live performance, this could be a pretty cool idea. Let's change the time amount, increase the amount on that, increase the amount on this. Let's just hear what we have now. And again, this is all happening with one turn of a knob. Yeah. That's pretty cool, but we're probably going to want a reverb in there somewhere. And I'll just go ahead and put a little bit of a filter on that. And increase the reverb time. Cool. So you can get as experimental with this as you want. I'll even have it so that it increases this high band here. Yeah. Very cool. And then maybe the last thing I'll add is just a resonator bank, just because they're always fun to use. I really love the resonator bank. I don't think many people use it, but I think it's very cool, especially if you're doing a freeze effect like this. And if you want to get really fancy, you could maybe know like what the dominant chord is in the song you're working with and program this accordingly. There's just a million things you can do. Yeah. And then the very last thing I'd probably add in here is a delay. And then this is going to be fun. Let's have it do some stuff here. Let's have it move this one this way. This guy this way. And increase the mix. All right, so let's take a listen to this. And again, the main concept I want you to get out of this is that we're controlling what's being fed in. So I don't have to worry about like adding a compressor or a peak limiter or something to control all of that other information going into the delay, especially when we're adding a second delay to the signal. Yeah. So look at that. This effect has started from here to here. Really wild stuff. All right, so we have that taken care of. The next effect we're going to look at is the envelope verb. And all this really is a pretty advanced way of using the audio mod to modulate a number of different parameters all at the same time. So in this case, we're focusing on the reverb, but you could do this with a million different things. Let's just take a listen to it and do it with those transients. Really wash it out. And then if you kind of fade it in, you can make it a bit more usable in more of a live performance sort of context. It's just a cool idea. And we could even take this one step further if we wanted to. And this is what I've already shown you, which I think is kind of cool. You know, we're going into like second order modulation here. Maybe third order modulation. I don't know. I've lost track. But what I could do now is I could actually set this up and it's still listening to our input signal here, or here I should say, but I can actually get it to control the macro controls. So for example, I could use it to control the mix, the gain, increase the release time. That might be interesting. And I'm not even sure what some of these effects do. So Who knows? We're just having fun. That's the attack time. Okay, so I need to increase this. And then if I'm not seeing as much movement as I want, I can increase the input. So I can increase the dB level on this to get a more drastic effect.
Yeah.
Let's add a delay to the end of this. And like right now, we're seeing a little bit of movement, but not a ton. So I could jack it up if I really wanted to get movement. And now what we really only need are a couple of macro controls to adjust the gain amount going in. And this one actually already does it. You can see this little guy moving, but we can take this a step further, obviously. And let's actually do it this way. Let's put it down pretty low and see how high that looks like it's going. Okay. And then also have it control this gain there.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure audiences are going to be flocking to the dance floor with that kind of effect, but it's fun. You can probably find more usable applications for this, but I just thought it was a kind of cool idea that you could, you know, take what he's done a step further and add an additional audio mod to control macros. Just again, talking about the flexibility inside of Bitwig Studio here. Last but not least, we're going to talk about a technique using the sampler device, and it's kind of like a granular technique, not exactly, but it's paring up the arpeggiator with the sampler to re-trigger just very small little fractions, little grains of an audio clip that we have. And so I'll just set this up quickly so you can see it, and then you can take it in your own direction. So I'm going to go ahead and add in a sampler here. Here's our audio clip that we're going to be working with.
NASA unveiled some plans this week that might just blow your mind into orbit.
You know it. So, okay, let's drag it in. Great. We can take a listen here. Why don't we go ahead and key track it?
NASA unveiled some plans this week.
Okay, so that's kind of cool, but what happens if we go in here to Note Effects and add an arpeggiator? Got that swing going too. And I can even increase the speed of this to make it more grainy. And now what I'm going to do is actually pull back on this sustain. Try to get a nice sweet spot. Okay, so that's kind of cool in itself. And if you look at what he's done here, and we'll do it in a second, he's also added in what's kind of like a pseudo grain delay. But for now, let's just have fun scanning through this audio track. So one way I can do that is by using this LFO here in sample and hold mode. So it's just going to go to different places based on the time integer value set. Let's make it, we can actually set it to be the same if we want, or we could set it to be slightly different. Maybe I'll go with like 16th note triplets. That might be cool. And I'm just going to set this on the sample start. So now, So now we're jumping all through this audio clip at the start because this arpeggiator is re-triggering the note each time. So we're getting this really cool effect. But this is still kind of lame. Why don't we take this a step further and let's create kind of like a grain delay of sorts. So I'm going to go in here. I'm going to create an effects layer. And I'm just going to add in a bunch of delay ones. Okay. We'll start by just adding 4. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn them all to this first value here. Great. We can turn the feedback down a little bit. And now I'm just going to slightly change these offset values. And I'm going to change the panning in here. Pan those ones. So now to actually make this a little more grainy, we could actually go into the arpeggiator and speed that up even. And let's actually change this. And having that little release on the end is what really makes this kind of interesting. Because if this is off, all we really have is that kind of grain cloud that's been created. So I could go in here now and maybe add in like a reverb at the end of this. And don't forget, you can also mess around with these macro controls here. So you could create one to foreseeably increase the feedback on all of these. And maybe play with other parameters too. We'll just mess with these last two a little bit more extreme. Yeah. Why not? Okay, so now let's take a listen. And again, it's just me now kind of being more of a kid in a candy store messing around with some of these parameters. And I can actually take this guy and be able to control the feedback here, but then also be able to control the rotary device here so I can get it all out to one top level macro. So anyway, instead of me just messing around here for the next 3 hours, you can check out the actual preset pack itself and see how he's used this a number of times to actually get some really cool effects. So if I go into the instrument track here, add in a chain, and we'll load in one of his presets here. A couple of these sound really fantastic. Why don't we just use the basic choir? You see we have this sampler device here. We have our arpeggiator going really fast. And then inside of the effects, we also have these FX layers, which are doing exactly what I just did there. They're kind of like grain delays. And he even called this 4-grain. And you could save that into your own library if you just want to have access to that FX layer. And with his spread control, he's set it up so that the pans will be pushed out further. And then you can also increase the feedback inside of each of these delay lines here. So let's take a listen to what he was able to come up with. You'll notice right away one of the big differences is that we're not scanning through this audio file. He's actually taken an LFO and just moving through the sample start ever so slowly, so we get a much smoother kind of Boards of Canada feel. So that's what I was trying to talk about at the very beginning with musicality, while still looking at and using Bitwig in more of a complex modulatory sort of way. So I hope you guys have learned something new. Go through it yourself, see what you're able to come up with. Thanks a lot. Take care.